Mm-hmm. Are we? Oh, wow. What does YouTube even see? We don't know. Okay, I don't know. Let's start. Anyway, we're live already. So welcome, everyone, to this blockchain X art discussion. I wanted to introduce a little bit about why we're here, a little bit about our course and the topic. So blockchain in the art space resonates quite closely to us as a community here at MA Innovation Management in Central St. Martin's. In our master's degree, which is all about creativity, innovation, entrepreneurship, and social impact. Our students are working on many creative projects, envisioning the future of a variety of discourses, regenerative design, and hybrid creativity. And I do have to mention the pandemic here, which had further accelerated the introduction of new digital solutions. Thinking of AR performances and concerts, VR gaming, digital fashion collections, virtual galleries. All of this has become an important part of our everyday lives. And digital culture is no longer an addition to the reality. It became one of its layers, and for some gained subjectivity. And this, for digital artists and crypto art makers, has actually turned out to be quite favorable. It gave them the opportunity to legitimize this new trend through established institutions, such as auction houses, media outlets, and galleries. This roundtable with experts from these institutions, with artists, will survey the current state of the blockchain and art landscape, its prospects as a sustainable ecosystem, from proof of stake to crypto aesthetics, and some discussion about environmental costs of the minting process. Unfortunately, Ruth Catlow and Arthur are not able to join us today, but I do have an amazing surprise guest. So let's start. We're having with us today Alex Exoric, contributor, editor of art and technology at Flash Art, Karina Mostert, project manager and specialist writer at Sotheby, Anka Koltis, founder and owner of Anka Koltis Gallery, actually the world's first gallery to represent a robot artist. And we're having Robert Alice, Ben, if you can hear us, calling from, I think, the airport in New York on the way to Art Basel, Miami. He's the artist. Hello. Whose NFT has been sold, first NFT sold by the major auction house Christie's in New York. We also have Simon Denny, one of the leading artists who worked with the blockchain space since 2016, who actually will co-join me in a quite experimental way through some video materials that he prepared especially for us. And before we start, I just wanted to ask how many of you are not entirely sure what blockchain as an underlying technology is? So we have some hands. I thought that I will use this opportunity to share quite a nice thing that I found recently, and I think it's a great story to talk about blockchain. It's called the Byzantine Generals Problem, quite known in cryptography. And let's imagine a castle where we have Arthur actually. Here.
Sorry, I wasn't super clear on the logistics.
I need to give you a microphone. Okay, I'll do the introduction again.
Thank you.
So Arthur made it. He's a co-creator of Tezos, an open source protocol with a proof of stake consensus mechanism, self-amendment, and community-driven governance. In normal words, it's a green blockchain on which you can mint NFTs, and companies like McLaren, Red Bull, Guerlain, Grammy, Art Basel, Miami, all of them are minting on Tezos, so we're excited to have you here as well. Yes, you will be very mad if I'm talking about this, but hopefully, don't listen now. I'm talking about the Byzantine generals problem.
The what?
The Byzantine generals problem.
Okay, yeah.
So I just wanted to have a simplified version of that. So let's imagine we have a castle where it's under the siege, and the castle has 3,000 defenders. The enemy has, however, 5,000 troops. So we have 5 groups of 5 commanders surrounding the castle, each of the commander having 1,000 troops, and the castle is only 3. So it's 3 against 5. The only way the operation would actually work is if all these 5,000 guys were attacking the same way. Unfortunately, in that time, there was no WhatsApp groups, and they couldn't ping each other about the strategy. So what happened is that they would use a horse runner as a messenger and pass on the message about the attack time. So let's imagine the commander number 1 with 1,000 would decide, let's attack at 3 a.m. He's passing on the message to the commander number 2, 3 a.m., and he's passing on to commander number 3. And there's one problem, which is that the commander number 3 is a traitor. So what happens is he's a traitor, so he changes the message that the attack is at 7 a.m. Instead of 3, he changes it to 7 a.m. And the message is being passed on by to the commander number 4 and number 5 that it's actually 7 a.m. So what happens is the night passes, and at 3 a.m. only number 1 and number 2, so 2,000 troops are attacking the castle, and they're against 3,000 guys plus the traitor troops, so it's 4,000 against 2, so they're losing the battle. And 4 hours later, the poor other guys who are not aware of that, commander number 4 and commander number 5, are attacking again with 2,000 troops, and they're losing. And this opens up so many questions, and I think why blockchain is so fascinating is like one of the key features of it is the fact that every node in the network, in the blockchain ledger, acts as a validator that they can only together collectively propose, ratify, and eventually come to the consensus about the set of transactions and data that can be placed on the next block. I bet we'll talk about it more in detail. And this notion of the immutability of the blockchain technology means that it's impossible to modify, alter, or delete any information that has been previously validated and placed on a block, on the previous block. So I have to be honest, I was very nervous to say that in front of Arthur, who is a mathematician and an author of the white paper, but I hope it was fun and somehow gave you a grasp of like what is blockchain and why it's quite useful for authenticity certification, digital ownership, and all the topics that we're going to cover today. To start the conversation, I want to play the first message from Simon, and he will kick off the panel. Just the whole thing.
Hello, thank you very much. It's been here talking to you in presence at this blockchain roundtable. I am sitting in my studio in Berlin, and I thought I'd share with you my material that I've been working with the past few years on blockchain and art. So let me just share screen right now. Okay, a little material that we can talk through. So a few slides of how I got into making knowledge about blockchain. And so this is an installation I did in 2016 that features a now very famous platform and its founder, Ethereum platform. I did it as part of the Berlin Biennale in 2016. And I am an artist who's made a lot of work about technology business people and their promises to the world and dreams. And yeah, I pulled on a few different aesthetics to pull this kind of trade fair booth together, which is actually situated inside a former communist headquarters in Berlin, and the aluminum dove industry image in the background is part of that venue, which is now a business school. But I made a series of sculptural, speculative, trade fair booths, which sort of look like they were marketing these different visions for what blockchain could be. And alongside that, I also produced with a stamp designer, Linda Kenchev, a series of postage stamps that we printed with the German Bundesdruckerei, who make all money and stamps in Germany. This image, which is sort of a speculative stamp, that sort of tried to contain some of the visual ideology I thought were coming with the material at the time. Price of it, what was $1 in the ETH at the time, which is laughable now, obviously. And more recently, I revisited that work in a Sotheby's auction, where I worked with a friend of mine, earlier in who has also done lots of stuff around blockchain and now works for Cosmos and his chain. But he also did the early innings of Project Clovers. And I was talking to Billy about this piece and some other people as well, and I wanted to try and attempt to mint this work back in time. And so Billy helped me find an old, really defunct ENX project where an NFT was available from 2018. And so I put a rubber stamp of that token on the stamp and swapped out the image for the existing token. And you can see the OpenSea page of that collection there with a couple of objects that look very much not like the other ones. And so that's when we produce this kind of backdated NFT for this earlier STEM work of mine. So in 21, I started to think, well, actually 2019, even I was asked by the director of Kunstverein in Hamburg to produce kind of a follow-up to proof of work. So proof of stake, both named after consensus mechanisms. I then produced this show, which opened in September of this year, and just closed recently. And so it was a different kind of show, again, connecting things from the art world to kind of more crypto projects, but I wanted to look at a wider selection of artworks that weren't necessarily NFTs. There was a lot of art and curating of NFTs happening this year, and I thought, yeah, maybe a more meaningful connection was to zoom out and do something that was about ownership and a wider sense of the history of ownership and who can claim technology. So I worked with a number of artists producing a selection that looks a bit like this. This is Mike Kelly piece in the front. So nothing to do with crypto, made in 1990, but very much to do with ownership and gift economies, that piece. We also worked with a kind of again, like an installation structure that was based on one of the artworks in the show. This one by the artist Mostert, you can see foregrounded. Was a bunch of empty vitrines from an ethnographic display that was from the Ethnographic Museum in Hamburg that they'd thrown out that used to contain indigenous American or North American indigenous objects and cultural artifacts and indeed technologies, works of art in these things, and Timor recontextualized these vitrines and displayed them in the same layout but as empty. And for me, I thought it was a really interesting gesture about who can own what and who frames what kind of ownership. And also was sort of like thinking about is portrayed as a sort of a container that signifies a commodity or signifies something that can have and contain value isolated from its context, which has resonances with NFTs from that perspective. There was a number of other artists responding to those pieces as well. We had work by Robert Ellis, who I know is on the panel tonight as well in the show, and yeah, other kind of artists and artworks that again like resonated with these themes.
You won't hear it, but thank you, Simon. And I think let's link to Ben. He literally just named you out. And let's talk about the ownership issue. Who can claim the ownership of this technology? I know you have this project, Aletheia AI, who just raised 16 million. That is an AI algorithm that it's built on top of the input from community. However, it's based on the seed manifesto that you wrote yourself. Who owns it? Who is the creator of it?
Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, good. I'm in New York airport, and I've become acutely aware of how loud the tannoy is when I never like think about this before, but obviously during a panel you start thinking about it. So I apologize in advance. On the question of ownership, I think maybe just quickly, quite good just to go tell you a little bit more about that particular artwork and what the kind of issues that it raises. It was an NFT that used some very complex AI technology, including OpenAI's GPT-3, which is probably the most sophisticated neural net language generator, i.e. you can put a prompt into it, maybe a couple of words. AI can spit out text. And I got interested through a book called Pharmaco AI, which was really a book that started with the author writing a seed text. So it was like one line, and the entire book was written by GPT-3. And GPT-3 can do long form humor, it can do metaphor and simile, it can do pathos, it can do emotion, it can do long form conversation, narrative arcs, paragraphs, chapters, you name it. It was one of the best books I read this year. And up until now, GPT-3 has really kind of been very closely guarded. And so I applied to get access to the AI, and along with one of the leading NFT AI companies, made what's called an intelligent NFT, or an INFT, which was the token standard. And effectively, what you could do is you could have a long form conversation with this avatar. In a similar way that you've seen with kind of other AI robots, but obviously you can put on the blockchain, gives it sort of several other powers, as it were, i.e. one can speak to it, 5,000 people can speak to it at one time. And obviously the seed text was governed by a kind of character text that I wrote. When it comes to ownership, particularly, well, the work was sold to an individual collector. And it now lives in the Metaverse, and I can after the call give you links to it. And I think, I mean, from an ownership point of view, it's quite cut and dry. I think there will be worlds where decentralized autonomous organizations kind of group round and pick up these avatars, because they're quite interesting artistic models from a finance point of view. Because they actually sell an experience, and so you can go into Decentraland and link your MetaMask wallet up, and which is basically like an Ethereum wallet, and you can, for 20 questions, you can pay a fee of I think $50. But over the course of the time that the work was exhibited, it was viewed by several 100,000 people, and you get this interesting question about the wisdom or madness of crowds. Because obviously it's machine learning, so with each input, it was picking up the avatar or AI behind it was picking up data from the questions asked, and there have been some scary stories, like Microsoft had a chatbot called Tay, about 5-10 years ago, which was spammed by right-wing rhetoric on Twitter, and actually started espousing right-wing views. And so we had to build quite strong safeguarding features. But I think most of all, when you have machine learning and you have something interacting in the public arena from an ownership point of view, socially, or at least from its own identity, it's owned in a very decentralized way, because with each question that the audience asks, they're actually claiming part of its character moving forward. So yeah, that's particularly that work. I think more generally, I think the only way I can steer the question around ownership potentially to something more relevant to the idea of NFTs is, I don't know who here is from the panel has been following the Constitution DAO, and I mean, has anyone here been following Constitution DAO? It's a DAO organization that was created about 2 weeks ago to fundraise for to bid on the Declaration of Independence at Sotheby's. And it started out as a lark on Twitter. I don't think, by the way, anything here exemplifies the power of blockchain more than this story to date. And the power for kind of rapid self-organization and fundraising online between trustless third parties. And basically, it started in about 10 or 15 days ago. Sotheby's announced that they were going to sell the Constitution, US Constitution, which is one of the founding documents of free and civic society. And a couple of people who had never bid on work before, had never been part of the kind of elite that normally bid on works like this. It was valued about 15 to 25 million, so an astronomical sum. And they just started messaging each other on Twitter. None of them knew each other, crucially. And someone put a tweet out saying, well, I wouldn't mind trying to raise some money to bid on this as a joke. And someone replied back, and then someone replied back to that. And before long, they found themselves on Discord, which is a kind of community tracking social media hub for people interested in kind of crypto. Where they then grew their membership to maybe 10 or 15 people on Twitter. They jumped on a group call. They set up what's called a DAO, so a decentralized autonomous organization, which is basically like a little mini government on the blockchain, where you can vote and come to consensus.
And it's very hard to hear you because there is some
really
at the airport. But I think we'll take it from here, because I think it raises a very important question that I actually wanted to ask. I collected a few of the questions in the spirit of Web3 from one of our students. And let's move from what you mentioned about this crowd fundraising and the fact that it's a community-driven space. And I wanted to ask this question to Anka and Karina. What is the role of institutions that used to curate art, or even us being an academic institution, CSM, what is the role of us anymore if there is like NFTs all about connecting directly the artist to the collector?
Yes, would you like to?
Are we going to lose our jobs now?
So of course, the blockchain technology for works and the logic which relies on, which basically putting all the participants in direct contact with each other, basically makes the intermediaries unnecessary. But I really hope that curators and institutions, in curatorial world especially, are not just intermediaries or middlemen. And to me, something that is curated means that there's a layer of value which simply wouldn't be there if it wasn't for that curation. And so, to answer your question, I think the logic of blockchain technology allows for two important things. Number one, it can remove the filters and middlemen which act as, let's say, obstacles in processes. But by doing that, it would actually allow us to realize the value, the added value that they can actually bring. And, you know, blockchain is complicated. I mean, I think a lot of people could do with explanations and a guided voice that helps navigate the material and the benefits and the risks of blockchain as a concept and of the applications of blockchain. And I see education as a key role in curatorial role. And so I think it becomes ever more important actually to curatorial role, which, you know, you don't have to think about it as a individual entity kind of trickling down the knowledge and, you know, super artist entity. It can be the community itself, which takes in a very kind of blockchain logic the feedback of its people, its participants, and then realize it.
Do we want the community feedback? I had this conversation with Arthur before about, so Tezos is a community-driven governance, and as I said, to change anything, you have to have, is it 80% of voting of the bakers?
Yeah.
So 80% of the consensus of the, let's say, community and the bakers there. And, you know, it raises the question about the populist or the mass taste, or in this case, if there's any ratification. My biggest example is like, if we ask the community, if we ask the people that Brexit happens, how do we overcome these issues in a community-driven?
I really, is this working? That doesn't seem like it.
I can do mine.
That would work. Yeah, that works too. Just a second. Hello. Yeah. Well, I think it's highly topic dependent. The type of decision you want to make, you know, for deciding on the technology you're going to use as your base layer, the foundation on which you build everything in a blockchain, for example. That's something that needs to be extremely conservative, for example, because you don't want to be changing willy-nilly. So you need to make very slow, well thought out, well deliberated changes. You want to have a very large majority in favor before doing anything. That's one thing. But different type of organizations, different goals are going to have different form of governance because they're going after a different goal. And you know, if the risks and the payoff change, if you know, you might be in a situation where actually what pays off is taking risk and exploring new ideas and doing new things, in which case you would not want a very conservative form of governance where you move very slowly and only make small changes progressively. You would want something very radical. So I don't think there's one size fits all in terms of governance. It's highly topic dependent and mission dependent.
Anka?
Yes.
What about the community-driven taste as a
Yeah.
gallerist?
I think as a gallerist, there is not really a community-driven taste. It's rather a gallerist taste, but
so would you, for example, represent an artist that has a lot of followers on Twitter, or would you still stick to
yes,
what you believe is good?
Yeah, yes. But can I come back to the subject of the role of curation and as well as a middleman that you started to develop? And I think that the role of curation is crucial with for the NFT artists, as well as of the middleman. And there are like two reasons for that. NFT art needs today contextualization within the art history, as well as for the as a middleman, the artist, the gallery and the middleman, what they can bring is the expansion of the collectorship. So what I mean by that is that today there is very little writing about the content of the NFT works. So today, whoever is interested very little even about the NFT art, they could read about the price of people artwork. Every day is 5,000 days. Yeah,
The Bibli one.
yes, exactly. But who really properly looked at these images? Who really could read or descriptions of these images of these works? So I think this is extremely important, like the curations and showcasing these artworks. There was an extremely brilliant group exhibition recently at Carolina Museum, Francisco Carolina Museum in Linz. It was called Proof of Art, and it was the first world exhibition about the history of digital and NFT art. It was curated by Jesse Damiani. So what I think that the showcasing these artists, show these artists, write about these artists, and give them a critical acclaim is extremely important in order for them to last. Yes,
We
exactly.
have an art historian
artists,
here.
with the writers like Alex, for example. In terms the second point is about the middleman, the importance of the middleman. Today, again, the collectors. From my experience and from what I saw at my gallery, there is very little overlap between the NFT collectors and the gallery collectors. So what happens? The NFT collectors, they collect the artworks online. They store them in their crypto wallets, and they don't go to the galleries. They have little knowledge about how the gallery operates. On the other hand, the traditional collectors, they don't navigate the marketplaces where the NFT artwork is sold, and they have very little knowledge of these spaces. So I think the important role of the galleries and auction houses who started showcasing this art, so these Christie's and Phillips and the galleries as mine, is to bridge and to make this bridge between these two different worlds and to extend the collectorship for these artists. There is also, from what I heard, the desire of some of these very successful NFT artists to have gallery exhibitions. For example, Olive Allen, I heard saying how that she would love to have gallery exhibitions and even gallery representation because they need this support.
But as you said, the collectors are slightly different. They have different tastes, the NFT collectors. So from the perspective of an art historian, can you elaborate a little bit about the differences in the crypto aesthetics? So, how different is the NFT art from what we know, what we consider as art previously?
So I think it's probably worth saying that quite a lot changed during the pandemic. And there's historical generalization and historical split, which dates back to someone like Diego Rivera, that separated fine art from what he called the cultural industry and what's increasingly known as the cultural industries, which would constitute digital illustrators, game engine designers, essentially all of those marginalized historically and set apart from the gallery system. One of the consequences of solitary confinement during the pandemic was that we were all forced to share by experience images on the digital platform. And as a result, that whole separation between fine artists and digital creatives was really blurred, and probably blurred once and for all, I would suggest. However, something curious has happened since, and rightly talks about the separation between communities of the traditional contemporary art world and that of the NFT world, and the collectors also seem to be, at least at the moment, from different worlds. But in the process of, in theory, making art making and art selling much more egalitarian for artists who, in theory, can sell directly to their buyers. In practice, almost overnight, a new wave of gatekeepers has sort of inserted themselves between the artist and the collector, and are largely talking about the NFT marketplaces and the proliferation of the blockchain.
one of the things that a number of those, if not all of those marketplaces have come to the decision about is that what they need is more curation. So this idea that the inevitable consequence of the blockchain is a space without mediators seems to have been proven, at least at the moment, false. And I think to some extent the artist stands to suffer from that. On the other hand, many artists who are politically minded, who are perhaps have bigger Instagram followings, will benefit from that new institution cohering. And so I think my worry is what started as a kind of utopian decentralized fantasy is increasingly becoming decentralized in all the name, or at least more hierarchical than perhaps it might be.
Talking about marketplaces, one of the marketplaces Figured Note was closed recently.
Or is it?
Oh, I know it's reawakened, but we can talk about it. I can share a video. I'll give the microphone to share about it. But I think actually, what it reminds me is that I think you mentioned that previously that 97% of all the NFTs are minted on Ethereum. Ethereum, actually, one of its standards, ERC 721, actually was named today #1 most powerful artist according to Art Review. Again, who claims to be a creator? Is it the ERC 721, or is it actually an artist? So let's move to the problem of Ethereum and the blockchains that we know so far. Most popular ones, Bitcoin, which again, if it would be a country, it would be in the top 30 most top 30 in terms of the energy consumption. And then of course we have the Tezos founder here, which I really would love you to share a bit and explain what is the difference between proof of stake and proof of work, and why we can actually fight back the issue of the environmental costs.
I think I figured it out. All right. So proof of stake versus proof of work. When you're trying to build a blockchain, essentially you're trying to build a sort of shared data structure that anyone can write to and anyone can read, and it's shared and it's global. And you want to make it open and permissionless so that anyone can come in and validate the content. Anyone can come in and participate in maintaining it. The difficulty you have that you alluded to is the Byzantine general problem is that if anyone can participate in maintaining it, some people could try to destroy it. Some people could try to put delete information or invalidate information. So in general, in this system, you needed some sort of honest majority. And in a decentralized setting, when you don't have a concept of identity, what is a majority? You can't say it's a majority of people, because in an algorithm, you don't have the concept of what is a person. The only thing you have is bits. So in a world of bits, what is an honest majority? And the solution that was introduced by Bitcoin, and it is also used by Ethereum, is to say, well, if you burn electricity, you actually have a way of proving that in the world of bits. There's a link, you can spend energy to do some use this computation, but as a result, you will be able to prove that you spent all that energy. And so the notion of identity in proof of work chains is I have spent some energy, and therefore, I've done something costly. So the door is open, anyone can participate if they spend energy, but it's not wide open in the sense that a single party cannot come in and claim half of the power in the network. So that's, think of it as a way to kind of ration participating in the network. In proof of stake, we don't rely on energy for this. The notion of identity in proof of stake is stake or owning tokens, because networks like Ethereum or Bitcoin, they're proof of work, they also have a token, a currency attached to it. The idea of proof of stake is that you want to use the currency itself for determining participation in a consensus, in participation in the network. So if you want to validate the network, if you want to secure the network, you need to have some tokens. And the nice thing about it is that you don't have to spend any energy. Now, of course, there's a little bit of energy that's being spent because you're still running a server, right? You're still running a machine. So you're going to have some amount of energy that's being spent in the same way as that if you want to send a tweet or a text message, there's a computer somewhere that's running. But that's a very, very, very small fraction. In fact, 1 in 10 million of the amount of energy that would be spent on the in a proof of work network. The difficulty with proof of stake is it's a little harder because in order to have the notion of who owns how many tokens, you need your network to be secure. And for your network to be secure, you need to have this consensus mechanism. So you have a bit of a circular dependency, which is why proof of stake didn't arise as soon as proof of work. It's a little more involved, but it has a lot of benefits in terms of security, in terms of energy consumption, speed. And so Tezos, which was launched in 2018, is a proof of stake network. It uses about 1 in 10 millions of the energy consumption of Bitcoin or Ethereum. So it's very, very minimal consumption, and it's found a lot of popularity with artists minting NFTs.
I think we can play another maybe message. Simon actually will share with us a little bit about Tezos as well, hopefully.
My own Tezos space in keyword where I worked with a bunch of scholars to select a work or an object rather that they thought talked about technology organization. And and then I selected an object that illustrated that object and made an image of it and put that image on the Tezos blockchain and gifted the NFT back to the author as a kind of alternative currency for selecting what technology was. So this is a close-up of the entry on which is sort of now migrated by Wendy Chun and Gillian Russell about filters, which I'm sure is an object of an executive decision-making robot from the 80s to illustrate. And those series of tokens and photographs were also objects of the space where you could go from 2 iPhotos back to the image of the token. So that piece as well. And I guess one more thing to say is I'm planning another NFT release and collaboration that I'm circling back onto the work that I've done in the past as well, and fascination I've long had for this website for Puck's Company, which was a really amazing documentation of flame outs of the company's 2001 companies as they closed in the 2001 .com crash. So I guess like the first web, we're like heading towards the third web. Thinking back to business models from that time. And I kind of found a sort of image bank of screen grabs of screens of death from those early internet business models. And then I started to think about doing a kind of a seance. So I got together with the artist that has done those drawings for the CryptoSphere project and also a machine learning group of image making algorithms, and made a kind of a chain of reimagining things that responds to the .com boom. I was inspired by the work of Mark Andreessen. This quote: "Almost every .com idea from '99 available to see." So I was thinking about kind of what we need to bring back dead companies in a Web3 seance of Web1 spirits, but no candles, only gas. And I got together and worked with making a bunch of different outputs based on text descriptions of a company, and these ones are for a company called bizbuyer.com, which was a kind of listing for services for businesses that they could bid on. that came to an end in 2001. And then I took these machine learning outputs for imagining what the logo for these companies could have been in 2001 with kind of contemporary machine learning image, text to image software. And then kind of gave them to Guile to then imagine from one of those what he himself might do with his aesthetic and kind of finish that reimagining of that company. So here you have an illustration as the original company name, this bio, and their logo from 2001, the 2021 machine learning outputs, one of his imaginations, and then Dial's top level, like reimagining what that is. And all of these you can mint also as subdomains, ENS subdomains. So you'll not only kind of on an image produced reimagining this past company, but you'll also be kind of imagining reviving a company as a group of NFTs that are all related by a certain name. So that's my little trip through NFTs, and I wish I could be further part of the discussion as it goes forward. So much.
Great. I wanted to pick on that .com bubble and then kind of lead us to the discussion, is NFT a bubble? One of the biggest questions I have is if we buy art and there is a value of it, so let's say it will increase from 2 million to 10 million. The thing is that we're buying here in cryptocurrencies. So an easy math, let's say Ethereum, we buy it at the artwork is worth 1 Ethereum. So let's say I bought it at a stage when it was 400. So the artwork costs 400, and then the moment there is a bubble, or let's say the market is doing well, Ethereum is, I don't even know how much, it's about 6,000 or something, or even more, three. I'm very optimistic. Let's say, I think Bitcoin was $68,000 at once. Let's say it's 60,000. So I bought it for 1 Ethereum worth 60,000. It's 3,500. 3,500 right now. What if it goes down? Then the value of the artwork is less. How do you value now then the artworks that people buy?
I don't think the value of the art has anything to do with the value of the currency you purchase it with. If I buy a piece from a Venezuelan artist and the Bolivar crashes, doesn't mean the piece is less valuable. Or if I buy a piece from a Swiss artist and a Swiss franc rallies, it doesn't make the piece more valuable. I think there's some truth to it in the sense that there's some correlation, because some holders of cryptocurrencies who got large amount of money in short periods of time, I think, decide to go shopping, and it feels like silly money to them because it's just like came in. So you see a little bit of that, but I think in the long run there should be basically no correlation between the two. The value of the piece is the value of the piece. Now, that being said, broadly cryptocurrency markets and NFT markets have been up a lot this year. So I think you're seeing both the NFT phenomenon and cryptocurrencies rise at the same time, but it's I don't think the art is more expensive because the underlying currency you price it in has appreciated against some other currency.
Well, also I think you put your finger on a very important question at the core of the art market, which is value of the art versus price. Right. So, how much should something cost? Is how much you as a buyer or as a collector are prepared to pay for it. Obviously, in a competitive environment, what you're prepared to pay is seen in relation to what other people are prepared to pay, especially in a bidding system. You get a bid, and so the value and the price basically shoot up. I think with NFTs, you get something very interesting. If you basically break down very roughly what an NFT is. When you buy an NFT, you're basically getting a piece of code which is stored on the blockchain, and that's the permanent record, the proof of ownership, what guarantees the authenticity of something. You get a link, and then you get a digital asset linked. And bear in mind that the digital asset can change. So I think when we're appreciating an NFT, we need to grapple with the question, are we appreciating the abstract qualities and abstract concepts which the NFT points to, meaning the authenticity, the proof of ownership, the uniqueness which are guaranteed by the blockchain, and what is the role of aesthetics? And since we're talking about art, aesthetics are pretty core there. And if the digital asset can change, and it's something actually Simon plays with in his work, especially with the backdated NFT, which is the Sotheby's, he illustrated this, that the code stays, but the digital asset to which the code points, that can change. So what are you interested in?
So it can change in some instances. It depends how the NFT is programmed, and it's if you can change the underlying digital asset, it's considered a very bad practice. And but a lot of marketplaces, including Hitman, for example, do it correctly. Where no, you cannot change digital art. So it depends. Some NFTs are loose and lax with this, but others are not.
That's true, but I think that the moment you have an NFT where you can do that, you see the potential flow, and then absolutely you're right, we can call it an exception, but once it happens, the exception kind of makes the rule. So that's the potential, and so you're kind of looking at the utopia of the blockchain versus the reality of it, and.
I don't know if it's it's really so it depends on which if it depends on which sub-market of NFTs you're going, if you're going in sports collectible and so on and so forth. But I would say, for art and for serious art, almost everything that I've seen has been done well. So the majority is actually doing it correctly. And the trend is also in the direction because people have become aware of this problem. And so I do think today that as a rule, people are doing it right, and it wasn't always the case. There was also a funny experiment where one artist sold a bunch of NFTs with changeable images, and then he put images of rugs to do a rug pull on everyone. So that has happened, but I think there's awareness, and overall, I think the situation is pretty healthy from that standpoint.
Yeah, I think it's more like this. It's interesting on a conceptual level, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting also because this kind of experiment allows to, I think, place NFT artists and digital artists in a kind of canon, in a continuum with other artists in our history. It's a really key theme. The artists experimenting with and exploring the technology all their time. You have simplicity with Andy Warhol using the screen printing technique to make art, or David Hoffman using the iPad. And this is simple stuff compared to blockchain, experimentation with blockchain, but it's a kind of a narrative.
What about the digital assets? So I wanted to ask Anka about it. Can we use this certificate of authenticity and ownership for physical?
Digital and physical. Yes, there are various. Yes, there are different ways of certifying digitally a analog artwork, as the same way as digital artwork can be. And Kakutis Gallery have been offering digital blockchain certificates for all our artworks, like digital and analog, that we sell since the end of the last year. So one of the way, and very easy way we can do this is via a platform called Verisat. It's a platform, it works this way, that once we sell a work of painting, like oil painting, for example. We ask the artist to go to this platform, and the Verisat will check the artist's identity, and then we'll have it. They will send us the digital via email, like a link, blockchain registered certificate of authenticity for the network. There is also an option like to print this certificate on a very nice holographic kind of paper with nice design and a RQ code. So when you scan it, then it goes directly to the blockchain number, should I say, right? Yes, there are different platforms doing this kind of certificates. And now I'm also discussing with one specialist, like art lawyer who is specialized in NFTs, like how we could sell the paintings as NFTs, because the blockchain certificate on Verisat is not an NFT. It's not blockchain, it's not on Ethereum, but we are looking now at the ways how we can sell our paintings as NFTs. And how, like my question at this time is like how with time we can sell the work and the NFT certificate will follow the artwork, because sometimes collectors pay separately, and how to, and if it happens, or like how to avoid the split between the NFT certificate, which can be traded separately of the artwork. Like this is my question, open question. So,
I have that question as well, because people are talking about NFTing land, and I think, I mean, one of the examples that I have is that before the war, some Polish land did belong to Jewish people, and then after the war, they kind of were claimed by the government, by communistic government, and it was like, now it belongs to us. And 50 years later, they came back, so, well, actually, it's our land. Mm-hmm. And like, what is the binding contract here? Let's say in the council, which is saying it belongs to the Polish government or some Polish family, whereas people from New York would come back and say, no, actually, it's our land. And I think the same with this NFT. It's like, there can be a certificate where it's saying it belongs to this person, and then I can sell it to the next one. But the physical thing can just have a separate double life there happening. And we can't really, how can we really make sure that they are kind of...
I think it's a very complex issue. Then it will need a couple of lawyers and like discussions and consensus. Like, yeah.
At the end of the day, I think you have to take a step back and saying that there's no magic in the blockchains. It's just it's a really good book of records. So if you want to keep really good records and you want your records to be very reliable and to be very auditable, it will do that. But it will not, automatically defend your land from, if you're in Poland and the Nazis are coming and the Soviets are coming on the other side and then take your land, the blockchain is not going to help you. Perhaps after the war, after all is done, you can come in and the paper records have been burned, but you have your blockchain. You can say like, look, actually, I own this. But these are the concepts of property and possession and all of that are fiendishly complicated. Mm-hmm. So it's.
But in that case, the blockchain could help in if it was on the blockchain at the time of the transaction, right? Because then it's absolutely clear.
Yeah. And again, just because something is in the book of records isn't the only saying. If, for example, I go to a nice little old lady and I say, sell me your house, and she doesn't understand what she's signing, and she's signing this document, and I get the title for the house, that sale can still be invalidated in court. So there's a lot of complexity and richness around it that's not going to be captured by a single letter, but it's a start.
And also, actually, when I did this, I think that in relation to the concept of ownership, I think digital assets, especially in NFTs, can kind of function as an inspiration in some ways for more of physical assets. I was thinking the other day how when automatically when we say I own something, this is mine, then the conclusion is I can do with it whatever I like. And like this dress is mine, I can do with it whatever I like. And translated to the NFT world, that's slightly more complicated because of certain programs and systems and encoded within the NFTs. When something is bought, when the NFT is bought, there are some regulations and some protocols that basically limit the power of the buyer. And that's very interesting because translated to the art world, I've always thought that if you're able to afford a masterpiece, that doesn't mean you can do it whatever you like.
You can absolutely, like people think they can destroy work because it's their own, but the artists have their moral rights.
Exactly.
They can withdraw a work from an auction if it's not in good
Or
condition.
how things work now.
Mhm.
The common practice is that, you can afford a Botticelli, you can buy that Botticelli, and then you can just stick it in your vault, which frankly I disagree with. I don't agree with that. And so that's something that's regulated or potentially regulated, regulable within the real and digital assets, whereas in the physical assets level, it's still kind of much more flawed.
I think it leads me to actually the most important question. I actually wanted to ask Alex about it, that I was supposed to ask as the first one, but then I kind of got carried away, which every single person asks, like, what's the point of buying a JPEG that everyone else can download? It's number one question. If we talk about it, every single person.
I think
You
can
can
just say
redo it.
something as a gallerist and like knowing collectors and like they behavior. Collectors, they need to possess, like they need to have, they need to say, this is mine.
Yeah, they want to do whatever they want with it.
They have. I think it's in our human nature, and to say like, okay, this is, everybody can look at it, but this is my work, and they have the right to sell it. And now with the NFTs, they have a clear authorship on the works. I can tell you a story from my gallery. When I opened my gallery in 2015, so we are specialized in contemporary and new media art. The first solo show we had at the gallery was with Molly Soda. Molly Soda, she's based in New York now, and her entire she's a digital artist. She makes a lot of short videos. She has made at this time a lot of short videos from her bedroom in front of her, like camera, dancing, singing, and like expressing the feelings that the young girls could have in their own bedrooms. So her entire art, when we showed her work, was already online, YouTube, Vimeo, like everywhere. And we had this challenge, like how to show her work in a white gallery space with the white walls. So we had 25 videos. We showed her work on like iPhones, iPads, small screens, large screens, and like she placed some iPhones like in the pot plants. And the whole gallery was like painted in pink, very girly colors. And like people are asking me like, how do you sell these works? They're like everywhere online. Like, why do you sell them? And this was my first thing to say, like, they will look at the YouTube because it was before the NFTs, and they will say like, oh, look at this work, and this is mine, because they have this like kind of philosophy of saying that this is mine, it belongs to me. So at that time, it was before NFTs, and I'm super happy to see like NFTs, and I'm very happy about like what happens today, because when we are selling these works, we are selling them on memory sticks and with a certificate, like signed, a very traditional certificate of certified by the artist, like the authenticity by the artist. And we priced this work for the first time, like Action House do. Usually, just you must probably know, the way the works are priced in a gallery space on the primary market, it depends on the size. But with these videos, like what could we do? They were already online. So we priced the works depending on the number of views or likes. So like every view was 10p. So it was exactly the process that auction houses have. So like the most desired work will be the most expensive because people saw it, because people collectors know it. So we use this system of pricing in 2015 for our show. And now, like the same collectors who have more works, they could say like, oh, this is my work, but they will have the crypto wallet. So it's a nice evolution, and like it helps, I think, a lot of artists and us as galleries to deal with and with selling with these digital works.
Yeah, the question comes up often, and I think it's, it's kind of like coriander or cilantro, and some people really love cilantro, and some people think it completely tastes like soap, and it's a genetic thing. And I love coriander, and people who hate it just don't understand how people could possibly like it. And so, some people just couldn't imagine, like, you have the image, why would you possibly pay for this? This makes no sense. And other people just completely get it. And like, of course. And I think it depends if you have an attitude towards collecting or not. And those who do get it. And I see a lot of people who say, oh, you could just download, are not people who have collected or bought art pieces before, because they look at it purely from a consumption perspective, in a sense of like, I just want to maybe decorate my living room or look at something, as opposed to having a connection with a piece. So the different functions you have in purchasing this is, one is, as you mentioned, one thing you're buying cryptographically proven bragging rights in some sense. So there's a social component. Obviously, you're going to say like, hey, this is my piece. You can show it around, and you can say you bought it. Another way is you can support the artist. Now, of course, you could just give money to the artist directly, but because they can be resold through time, in a way, it's a way to support artists retroactively in some sense, because an artist today who doesn't have a big name might be able to sell their piece for more, knowing that the person who's supporting them today could sell it for a higher price later if the artist becomes more renowned. So there's a component about bragging rights, feeling a connection with the piece, supporting artists. All of these elements, I think, are one of the reasons why you might want to buy an NFT as opposed to merely enjoying the digital piece of art. But it's great that you can do both.
I think the stress on ownership is crucial. The history of the history of fine art is really a history of space collapsing from three-dimensional illusionism in the Renaissance to flatness in the modernist context, towards the dematerialization of the art object in the 60s. And to some extent, the NFT is, you can read it as an avant-garde, another avant-garde transition. But to me, the interesting thing that Simon Denny relies upon is the question of not so much time as being important to the NFT, i.e. the moment at which an NFT is minted or at which someone becomes an owner of an NFT, but the separation between the artifact and the token, to me, is a fundamental shift. Essentially, what that means is that the creative deposit of the artist is ultimately, or the relationship between the creativity of the artist and the ownership by the owner is fragile, because if, I don't know, Nifty Gateway goes down, so that's what happens. But if you don't trust if the file is insecure, and the primary focus of buying these objects is status, then it really shifts, I think ultimately the value of art away from creativity towards money as the new medium of expression and ownership. And I think I'm interested to see how the artist resale rights continues over time. Because obviously that does preserve the creative importance of the artist. But I'm starting to wonder whether really this is becoming a cult of ownership rather than artistic autonomy, which may be overdue, but it's certainly a big change. And I think it's one that's often concealed in the discussion about how much something costs or how much environmental damage is to it.
Great, a lot of thought-provoking statements there. I think we'll give it a little bit to think tonight, but I wanted to take maybe a question from the audience here, and I think we can move later to the YouTube questions as well.
there any parallel between this sort of music? So like what, music is something anyone can listen to, but it is a brain drop.
Yeah, I think it's been relatively unexplored so far. There are some companies building music NFTs. So one of, for example, is doing a few artists on Tezos, and they're doing the Grammys. Also, the Linkin Park artist Markinola is releasing music on Tezos. So they happen, and I happen to think that music NFTs are actually going to be one of the largest class of NFTs. They're still in a small minority, but I think they're going to end up dominating, just based on the fact that people really like collecting music. People have been collecting the physical media around music, and with the advent of streaming, you no longer have the satisfaction of collecting music, and NFTs can bring that back. And as you were saying, I think it's going to separate the idea of the artifact itself. So the music that you can listen to, and that you can just go on your streaming platform and listen to the music. You don't need to actually own it. And the fact that no, but I own that album in some sense.
That music is even more material than arts, and there's always the visual in some way attached to the art. There's music.
I also think it's just it's partly a matter of market size. I'm not familiar with artistry, but I was nothing was key intention what you were saying about this separation between fine arts and arts and culture. And is music art? Yeah, music is an art. Obviously, it's an art, but it's probably the most widely consumed form of art today by anyone. So it's just the sheer amount of music that people listen to, and the sheer audience size mean that I think it's going to be larger than visual arts, for example, in the NFT world.
We're seeing very interesting collaborations actually between this, between visual artists, music artists, actually Christie's so recently a music piece which are visual, and a poetry organization called Canada. It's very difficult.
Yeah, we have a lot of questions actually on YouTube, but I think a lot about which platform to choose to mint NFTs. I think we'll leave that for those in the audience to do some extra research. Of course, Tezos-based platforms, we would say.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think let's wrap up. Thank you for spending your time, generous time with us. I would like to just thank also all the teams from MA Innovation Management and Central St. Martins, especially Jeremy Thiel, head of college, for supporting us and making this event happen. Again, big thanks for all the speakers, also the speakers online. I think I will have to send them a message afterwards. And yeah, hope to see you soon. Do hop into our MA Innovation Management website to hear more about the open days and any future online events. That's it from for today. Take care, everyone.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you for listening.